welcome to the Libertarian Counterpoint. I'm Richard Fields. On the program we have the candidate for, I believe it's the 10th Congressional District, is
Yes,
that right?
correct.
Running against John Garamendi. Gary Clift, welcome to the show. And Gary's campaign manager, Gerald Clift. You keep it in the family, and you're running a lean and mean campaign, I guess.
Yes, we're trying to.
Why are you running for Congress, Gary?
Because I'm disappointed in the direction the country's going in. I think that most Americans and Californians would agree with me that we're spending too much money and that we need to live within our means. And my opponent, I believe, and many Californians believe, is part of the problem in California, and now he's gone to Washington. And I like to say that it's like a virus that's spreading. He wants to go bankrupt Washington like he's done to California.
Okay. What are the most resonant issues in the 10th District?
I think the 10th District, most people are concerned about jobs right now and the economy. We have not seen any recovery in California. In District 10, things are particularly hard because it's a very expensive place to live. Housing values have dropped by 50%. People are struggling to live within their means, and they want to see the government do that too. And I think that we are tired of borrowing money and hoping that we'll be able to pay it back someday. I think everybody's starting to realize that that's not possible.
Tell us a little bit about your background. What do you bring to the race?
I have about 30 years experience working for local, state, and federal government agencies. I've worked for private nonprofits and private businesses. I'm a businessman myself. I have a small farm in Solano County. I grew up as a service brat. I lived in 10 different countries as a child. I've seen the good and the bad of U.S. foreign policy, and I have studied foreign policy extensively for most of my life. I'm fluent in Spanish. 5 generations of my family have lived in Solano County, and 6 have lived in California.
So you're a homegrown Californian then,
I'm
even though you grew up
Californian.
even though you grew up around the world.
I was born in California, and we would come back every 2 years for home leave. And it's America, and California is one or two of the best places in the world to live.
What are what's the first issue that you would attack once you got to Washington?
We have to cut spending. We have to cut spending, and
Where would you cut? It's easy to say cut spending and cut fraud and abuse. What exactly would you want to cut?
We have to cut pretty much everywhere. We have to cut defense spending. We have to cut education spending. We need to give education back to the states. I think if we go back to states' rights, we will give a lot of the responsibilities that the federal government has taken from the states back to the states. It'll be cheaper, it'll be more efficient. We have to make entitlement programs more efficient and cheaper. But I do believe that we can cut in every department. I would like to see the borders of America secure. And one way to do that without costing any money is to bring the troops back from Europe and put them on our borders and secure our borders.
One of the problems on our borders, of course, is the problem of contraband goods, namely drugs, moving back and forth across the border. We're having a referendum in California this fall, which would essentially make marijuana more or less legal, at least in California.
That's correct.
Gerald, where do you stand on that?
Well,
I understand that you have worked on that issue in the past.
Yeah, I'm absolutely for the legalization of marijuana and Proposition 19. I was a coordinator in Sacramento until I moved down to Orange County, and essentially the government just failed in preventing people from using marijuana. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says that over 50% of people that are full-time employed have tried only 2 substances, marijuana and alcohol. It's less than 5% for every other substance, ecstasy, heroin, all this other stuff. So it's being used in society. It's very prevalent. It's California's largest cash crop, $14 billion a year, and it's no worse than alcohol. I would say even safer than alcohol. Alcohol use contributes to murders. According to U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice and Statistics, responsible for 40% of murders in the U.S., whereas a Dr. Crainster study of UCLA says that marijuana use does not increase your risk of, or does not increase likelihood that you're going to murder someone. Additionally, they say that the highway accidents do not increase from marijuana use, whereas U.S. Department of Highway and Safety Traffic Administration says that 47.4% of all highway accidents are alcohol related. So just comparing those 2 substances alone, we got a much more dangerous substance that's very prevalent in society, causing other people to die, or we have a substance that really no one has ever had a reported case of an overdose, or even any study that really indicates that you're going to increase your likelihood of hurting others, whether it be through killing them or driving a car.
Gary, how do you stand on Prop 219? 19? Do you support it?
I think it's a states' rights issue. I think the voters should be able to decide. I've 27 years experience in law enforcement. I have to say that I saw very few crimes that were the result of marijuana. Most of them would be cultivation issues in California because it's illegal. Yeah, I believe it's a states' rights issue.
What do you think the federal role should be?
The federal government just should not be involved. It's been a miserable failure. The drug enforcement policy of the federal government has spent billions of dollars, and we've accomplished very little.
Are you in favor of extending the Bush tax cuts?
Yes, I would say I am. I don't think we need any additional taxes right now. I know that living in California, I don't consider myself wealthy. My income is around $100,000 a year right now, and I cannot afford to pay any more taxes on whether my stocks that I have, my dividends, my business. I'm taxed to the max, and whatever more tax money we give the government, they're going to spend it. It's not like they're going to save it and pay down the debt. The more we give, the more they're going to spend.
And again, and on the spending side, you said you want to cut basically universally across the board. Are there any spending programs at the federal level that you would eliminate entirely?
I would like to see the U.S. Department of Education eliminated. I think that we could start by probably taking 50% of their budget and giving it back to the states, and then maybe another 10% a year till they're completely gone. I think that that's an example of a program that should be administered locally and by school districts and by the states. There's many other agencies like that too. I think there's several hundred agencies right now that currently are involved in the U.S. economy. I think that our U.S. aid that we give overseas is very inefficiently managed and could be significantly cut. Well,
that's interesting. You having seen firsthand what the Foreign Service does, what American diplomacy does on the ground in foreign countries. You're saying that that's a place where money could be cut?
Yes, but I'm talking also additionally USAID, which is a different function of than the State Department.
Right.
You have the Foreign Service and you have USAID, and it's very poorly administered and inefficient. And I don't think it's serving the purpose of helping facilitate democracies growing in other countries. It's more of a political tool that we use.
The Federal Reserve System, where do you stand on that?
I think that the American public needs to know what's going on with the Federal Reserve. I do believe it needs to be audited, and I think that there's probably a better way to administer that responsibility than have a Federal Reserve. So I would support legislation that would look at ending the Fed.
One of the little-known facts of American history is the Federal Reserve System is actually the second or third national bank that we've had, federal bank, central bank that we've had. The Jackson administration early in the 19th century got rid of the at that time central bank. Is that something that you think would be an experiment worth repeating? Just getting rid of the central bank entirely and going to a constitutionally mandated gold and or silver standard?
Yes, I think we need to experiment with other standards. In fact, I've seen some recently. I think Ron Paul has proposed one where we would have two. We would have one based on, say, the gold and silver standard, and continue with ours and allow people to go between the two of those. I believe that I understood it to be that.
Yeah, I think he sponsored legislation that would
Yes.
essentially repeal the legal tender laws, which require now that all debts must be paid in fiat dollars. And he would say, okay, let's make it possible for people to do contracts based on whatever medium of exchange, whether it's gold or silver or turkey wings.
See, my biggest concern is that there's a whole bunch of money that the Federal Reserve is manipulating and doing things with, and we are not allowed to know what is going on with it. And I don't think that is right. I don't trust the people in the government, and I don't trust the people in the big business, and I don't trust the bankers. I think most Americans would agree with me. We need to have transparency with our money policies. And I do believe, unfortunately, the news at first is going to be bad because we're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars that have been floated and lent and borrowed. And as honest as our politicians are and our leaders, I'm sure there's insider trading and stuff that goes on with these funds too. And people are making a lot of money off of it. And it is not part of a republic and a democracy.
People don't realize this, but Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's stock is still trading. It's a penny stock now, but it's still
Yes.
trading. Obviously, Chrysler and GM, not the same stock, but a stock is being traded on behalf for those companies. we spent, as you know, trillions of dollars bailing out these large, so-called too-big-to-fail businesses on the theory that this would save the economy. Has it, and would you let these companies fail?
I'm not sure I believe that we have saved the economy. I think we may have postponed some additional hardships that we're still going to have. I don't think I would have supported any of the bailouts the way they were done, and I would like to see the money paid back. It's a shame that we can't have successful businesses in this country like General Motors, but I think when the government gets involved, I don't see a good ending. Why did Ford survive and General Motors have to be bailed out? Now the government is saying that the reason Ford survived is because they helped General Motors. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, the secret of the matter is that if General Motors would have gone bankrupt, the car building industry, the factories would still exist, the labor force would still exist. What would happen whenever any company goes bankrupt is somebody picks up the assets, and it's somebody that has a lower capital cost, doesn't have the onerous union contracts to deal with, can start from scratch, and can make money using the same assets. There was, and continues to be, no hope whatsoever that General Motors or Chrysler, with their UAW contracts and legacy costs, will ever be able to do anything, barring a miraculous economic upturn.
Unless the federal government assumes responsibility for their
for endless subsidies,
right.
A la Amtrak and other federally managed.
And all the benefits they promise their retirees and stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree. I don't have the answer for that at this point, but I do believe that the government.
Well, the answer that I'm posing would be: should large companies be allowed to fail, go through the bankruptcy process?
I think that is the best thing in a capitalistic society, is to let the unsuccessful businesses fail and something stronger.
And let more competent hands pick up the pieces and move forward.
Yeah. All we're doing right now is rewarding failure.
Rewarding failure and postponing the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not a good thing to say, but I have a General Motors product, and it's been disappointing.
I long ago switched to Japanese.
I depend on my truck, and it's been disappointing.
Yeah.
I have a Ford Escape. I've liked it.
He's done well with his Ford, but
Okay.
I am.
California's Fair Political Practices Commission, Dan Schnur, has put out the word that he wants to regulate tweets and Facebook appeals on political campaigns. Now, you're in the thick of a political campaign right now. You have a whole lot of campaign law minutiae that you have to pay attention to, I'm assuming. Is this something that you think would cause more problems for your campaign, or is it not? It's tempest in a teapot.
I don't think it'll affect me because I deal with the Federal Election Commission and the state I don't have to do any reports to the Fair Political Practices Commission. Is completely different. I did in previous campaigns when I ran for state office, but I am a firm believer, as I told you earlier today, we have enough laws that regulate everything. We need to enforce the ones we have and maybe get rid of some of them. But I'm really resent any more regulations. And even though I deal with only the Federal Election Commission, it is a very complicated process, very time-consuming and very expensive. And the California one is even much more complicated already. I had to abide by it when I ran for state assembly in the 90s. And it is a monster. And as far as tweets and Facebooks and who's putting them out there, the voter and the consumer needs to be aware. They need to research stuff. The information is out there. Just like all those flyers you get during the election, you need to read the fine print and see who sent them out.